Hi, Peter Charles here, Hooked for Life Fly Fishing. And today I'm going to do a video on hooks, and it's going to be really a two-parter. There's going to be this one, which is on hooks in general that we use for fly fishing, and we're going to look at hooks for nymphs in the next video, which will be launched tomorrow. So let's get in discussing what this is all about. Now, everything in fly fishing is a compromise. You win something, you lose something. There's no absolute winner in anything in fly fishing. No matter what technique we try, we're going to lose someplace else. Whatever we gain here, we'll lose there. There's no free lunch. So it's same with hooks, and I'm looking at this from the perspective of how well a fly rides when it's stripped or swung versus how well it holds onto a fish. And unfortunately, they seem to go in opposite directions. So let's look at the issue here. And I'm going to start off with a standard wet fly hook. So there I've got my wet fly hook. My little piece of brass is the jaw of the fish. I'm pulling it straight off the brass as if I am fighting that fish. And you notice the angle that the hook point is riding at and the angle of the shank. And this is because there is a gap between where we tie the fly line, or the mono I should say, on the eye of the hook and the point of the hook. The hook point is not in line with the eye of the hook. The consequences for us with that is that during the fight, the fish has the ability to lever or rotate that out. Depending on, with a head shake, for example, the fish could actually cause that hook to pop out. Now, down eye hooks are built that way to sort of get around that to a certain extent. By having a down eye hook, we reduce that angle of the hook point relationship to the pull of the line a little bit more than if we use an up eye hook. Same thing, I'm going to pull it straight. Now, this is going through a greater angle than the down eye hook because the distance, and I'll put it this way so you can see, the distance between where the line pulls and the point of the hook is greater than the down eye hook. So as a consequence, it pulls at a greater angle, and that means it's more prone to being levered out or rotated out when a fish starts head shaking. So what gives you a good holding power? Well, I took a jig hook here. This is a garden variety jig hook, and when I pull that one straight, you can see the angle of the shank and the angle of the hook point are at a lower angle compared to the other two hooks we just looked at, the up eye and the down eye. And it's because the vertical separation between the eye and the point of the hook is less. So that angle is less. So that works out great for us. A jig hook will hold better. And it has some ride advantages too, because it rides point up if we weight the hook properly. Let's take one look at one last hook. This is a modified hook, and the hook point is in line with the eye of the hook. I've modified this. This is a salmon hook, and I have bent the point up so it's in line with the eye of the hook. This is like an English bait hook. This is the way they're built. And as a consequence, you get a direct pull. The hook point goes straight into the fish. The harder you pull on this, or the harder the fish fights, the more it puts the point straight into the jaw. So you're less likely to lose a fish with a hook point like this. And you'll see a lot of hooks, bait hooks, that are built this way because the fish is often taking the hook before we actually taking the bait before we actually set the hook. There's one last little thing I want to talk about, and that is the length of the shank. That has an impact too. Here we're going to look at a typical caddis scud hook. And as you can see, that hook point rides at quite an angle, despite the fact there's not a big gape between the hook point and the eye of the hook. It's because that shank length is short. So the longer the shank length, the less of a problem this becomes. But of course, again, that old no free lunch, the longer the hook shank, there's other problems when fighting fish because it can move it from side to side now. So where's that all going? When you're talking about tying a fly and you look at the pattern and it suggests a hook, we tend to just go, oh, cool, I'll use that hook. I've got that hook. I can do that. And we assume that there's some thought in there by the originator of the fly, but often it's the case that they're using what they had available, and that becomes the standard. And it can have an effect on how the fly swims, how it behaves, how well it holds onto a fish. And what I'm suggesting is that when we're picking hooks, we should be aware of all the things that hook design does and does not do. For example, op-eye hooks, they ride better for stripping and swinging. They look more natural in the water. You don't get the big saggy butt business going on that looks like a toddler with a full diaper. They stay nice and level or almost level. And if you're stripping them fairly fast in heavy current, they will stay level. So they ride better, but they don't hold on to fish as well. Compare that to, let's say, a long shank streamer hook, and you've got that big sag, and the fish can come up here and hit the wing and completely miss the point of the hook. So, there are trade-offs all around with these types of hooks. They do some things well and other things not so well. It's the awareness. When you pick a hook for a fly, you should be thinking about how this is going to get used, what kind of fish you're going for, whether they're hard to hang on to, easy to hang on to, how you want this thing to swim in the water, behave in the water. That should all be going through your thought processes when you are selecting a hook, and not just go, oh, well, it calls for this hook, so I'll use it. Because we don't know why the originator, especially when the pattern is like 100 years old, maybe that was the only hook the fellow had to work with at the time. So, let's give some thought to those hooks, what they'll do for us and what they won't do. And sometimes we get a better result if we think through our hook choices for our fly designs. So give that some thought. Cheers.